Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comment, I had no one contact me about any public comment. No one in the crowd? All right. Then we'll move on to number 4, approval of the December 1st, 2022 Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes, which are in your packet. Everybody had a chance to review them. Motion by Supervisor Robinson, second by Supervisor Straub. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 5, policy issue discussions and potential committee determination. 5A, budget transfer from Highway Reserve for County Highway KK box culvert.
Kevin and I are going to tag team on this one. I'll just hit you with some hard, cold numbers. It was right when the budgeting process was finishing up. We discovered a culvert down on Highway KK, a large culvert. It's an existing 66-foot by 17-foot by 11-foot steel arch that is having some structural issues for it. So it's something that we need to replace. Unfortunately, the cost of these structures are kind of going through the roof. We're looking at putting a box culvert in. And you'll see that the culvert for the box culvert itself is $247,000 and change. That's just for the culvert. That's not in place yet. So we're going to be looking at asking the committee to do a budget transfer out of our highway reserves for $500,000 for the installation of that. If there is some leftover funds, we also have another culvert we discovered on Highway O that we're doing. So we'd put some of those funds toward that, but the rest of the O one would come out of our normal maintenance funds. But Kevin can get into the structure itself.
Okay, I did include kind of a diagram in there. We went out last fall, got some measurements on this one, and we met with both property owners on the north side of that and have agreements with them to do some work and grading out on their property. We have an easement that we put together for school forest on the south side, and Corp Council's reviewing that for us right now so we can get that done. But all the landowners out there have been kind of briefed on this. We've met with them, gone through the project. DNR has gone through the review, and they like the size and the structure that we're looking to put in there. And then we are going through some floodplain coordination with it right now to make sure we're okay there through the county, and working with DNR floodplain people on that as well. So we did briefly look like at a bridge for this one. Cost would be more, and maintenance long-term. These box culverts are buried structures, so you put them down. The concrete should have 80 to 100 plus year lifetime on it, and we have no bridge deck to maintain, so maintenance on something like this is far less compared to a bridge where after about 35 years we'd be out there doing a resurfacing on that bridge, and those are usually costly maintenance type things. So our opinion, when we have a structure like this and we can do a concrete precast and buried in there, it's a nice, very long-term solution to these.
Any questions? I do have one. So what is the total budget transfer going to be? Not the 247,170, it's going to be more?
It'd be the $500,000.
It will be 500,000?
Correct, it'll be $500,000. A good rule of thumb for any time you put in a structure is basically what that structure costs. If you double it, you're going to be really close for insulation with the structure. We use that number even when we're putting in I tell townships when they're doing culvert aid, if the pipe costs $15,000, figure $30,000 for a project. It's a good rule of thumb, generally just to double that number.
One other question. How much do we know how much is in the highway reserve?
I don't have that number with me. We'd have to talk to Christie, but it's a substantial number.
Okay. Supervisor Straub?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With these box culverts, when I look at the metal culvert, that's on Black Creek? Is that where that culvert is located?
I believe that's correct.
Is that a navigable waterway?
Is that one?
I guess my question would be, it looks like someone can travel underneath, inside that culvert with a canoe or a kayak.
Yes.
And if with a box culvert, are they able to travel through and underneath?
Yes, it'll be, it's a twin 11-foot by 10-foot high cell, so it's 11 feet wide. I got to look real quick to see if we have, in the pictures that are included in your packet, you can kind of see the outlet of a similar structure that we had put in place. So those cells would be, they would be more navigable than the pipe that's in there right now. We work with DNR in setting the elevations of that. So we set them down into the stream so that that culvert naturally fills in with some natural sediments. Right now, during low flow, you would not be able to canoe in that one because there's a drop off from the outlet of the pipe to where the scour hole is. So the structure is bigger, and then we'll set it deeper so that it'll be a more continuous stream when we're done.
And just to follow up on that, is it a requirement that if a culvert in a navigable waterway would not be able to travel through it, would you have to provide provisions for having portage rights to get around? In other words, someone coming would say, I can't get my canoe through there. Now I got to go up and over, across the road, and then back down and reload my watercraft. But we won't have to worry about that on this one?
That's correct, yeah. I'm not sure if we need to provide that, but I know that's in our reviews with DNR, they ask us to set these deep enough so that it maintains that continuous stream. So usually on a pipe this size, after 40, 50 years of replacing it, we drop them at least a foot. I think this one was probably closer to 18 inches lower than the existing pipe. And that doesn't mess up the stream. It allows it to naturally move the way streams do. They'll degrade and move soils over time. So those streams will cut down lower and lower each year. You don't see it year by year, but after 50 years from a pipe, you'll see that. So we'll drop it down so that stream can go back and maintain its natural progress.
I don't believe to this date yet we've ever actually dropped a pipe where if it was a navigable, then we turn into a non-navigable. We've never done that.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson?
So you had mentioned there's another highway. Is that O that you're referencing?
Yeah, Highway O was budgeted. That one is included in our budget originally. One of the things where we mentioned we do that double the material cost where I don't remember ever coming in over that. Usually that's a conservative budget number. Highway O, that box culvert, and you guys are aware of how inflationary things are. Our original estimates on that were around $100,000, and I think you'll see it follows with about what we're seeing in the market. It's about 18 to 20% higher than what those costs were when we looked at it last year. So that one did come in about $20,000 more than what the estimates were from a year ago when we started that process, and that's where our market for materials are. So if we need extra on that one compared to what we budgeted, we should have plenty. If we put $500,000, and then if we stay under the $500,000, we'd go back into reserve. So it's.
Okay, so then the motion would be a budget transfer of $500,000 from highway reserves for County Highway HKK, Box Culvert, and County Highway O, if needed.
Correct. Remaining funds would go toward those.
So I'd make that motion.
Thank you. Got a motion? Need a second? Supervisor Stroh with a second. Corp Counsel, should we have a roll call vote on this because of the size of it, or?
I don't think you need to.
Don't need? Okay, thank you. All right, any discussion?
So if they can get the information to Kim Trueblood, we'll get it on finance for Wednesday of next week.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How long is the road going to be closed down? Is it this year?
We're planning to start it immediately after school gets done. It'll probably be a week of demolition and excavating. It is a deep excavation out there, 2 or 3 days to set the structure, and then another week to put it back. So 2 weeks if everything goes really, really well, but I think we were planning for about 3 weeks out there.
I'm just thinking about all the traffic, especially in the morning, that it'll probably end up going through the gravel road at 9 Mile.
They may, I think we were going to look at a detour route, push them down to O, but the locals will find other ways.
We probably want to keep an eye on the gravel, 9 Mile Road. Because there'll be a lot of traffic on it for that week.
Are they going to calcium chloride that road before?
We've never, I shouldn't say never, we generally do not do that. If the detour is posted, we expect the traffic to go where the detour is. We know that a lot of them will follow local roads, but trying to figure out exactly where they're going to travel, it's not been our past practice to do that.
Okay.
But the registered detour will be all, right? Where it says 2%.
Correct.
I'll let the town know.
Can you put up no truck traffic on the gravel? I know when they did Roselleville, all of a sudden all the trucks started running the gravel and it was a nightmare with dust and then you guys came in and watered it, but never did, but if they would have kept the trucks off, I think the problem wouldn't have existed.
We can work with I don't know, will there be village or town at that point? We will work with Rib Mountain.
Most of that gravel road is county, but then it turns into town road.
So we'll work with the
Town piece is
parks.
paved, but that would be a really challenging piece with a lot of semis on it, because the first half of it's sand.
Yeah.
It's not hard pack.
We'll work with the Parks Department.
I think that'd be a good idea, to put a.
Because if it was a nightmare in Roselleville, it was just an absolute, because they ran like 3 or 4 miles of gravel road, and it was just,
The issue I found, care if it's speed, trucks, weights, you can put as many signs up as you want. A lot of times they don't do much.
All right, is there any other discussion before we vote? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 5B, seasonal weight limit request for County Highway U from County Highway H, Pleasant Falls Road.
Evan is gingerly making his way up to bring it up to the screen to give you a location. But we have a request from the town of Rib Falls to open up County Trunk Highway U in the seasonal weight limits time to take the trucks that go to Mishka Sawmill, which is located off of Pheasant Falls Road on Boulder Falls Road. Currently, the trucks need to make an at-grade crossing on State Trunk Highway 29 to get up to the sawmill. There's a slight grade change there at the east of the intersection. So I feel more of a safety concern than anything else to get the trucks so if we let them go down Highway H, which is not posted, go up to Highway U, take U 1 mile to Pheasant Falls Road to get to the sawmill, will eliminate those trucks crossing at grade at the intersection of Pheasant Falls Road and 29. Again, there's a slight grade change there when you're heading to just east of that intersection. I had Mr. Hummer is here from the township, and he did a little digging for me. The sawmill right now, in 2022, there was 30 loads of logs hauled in a month of March and 1 in April and 20 in May. Outgoing lumber, sawdust, and bark, there was 23 loads in March, 23 loads in March, 20 in April, and 17 in May. Typical, the season weight restrictions are from mid-March to April. Weight restrictions are based on axle configuration, but basically it's 60% of legal loads. Staff does recommend this just for the safety sake of those trucks making left turns across 4 lanes with a grade change there. So if we would make this that would let them start using Highway H with the ramps year-round. We do have borings on County Chunk Highway U for that 1 mile. Basically, we have 4 inches of asphalt out there. Underneath that, we have probably 4 to 7 inches of crushed blacktop below that, and then the base below that. So we feel that that 1 mile would hold up for those loads of logs going through that area.
Thank you. Supervisor Seibert?
Is there potential for other trucks to use that route for,
There's really nothing else up there. It's just, Kevin has it up there. There's just that sawmills basically, anything up in that area. And if we're only gonna let them run that 1 mile, H is already open, we're only gonna let them run that 1 mile, so
there won't be a lot of...
there's no place for them to go after that.
Supervisor Robinson?
I'll move that we grant the seasonal weight variance or request.
Got a
Second it.
motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 5C, appoint weed commissioner for Marathon County under Wisconsin statute 66.0517.
So I'll hit this up. At this point, I'm really not looking for the appointment of a weed commissioner, and that's state statute term, so not what you think.
I was going to volunteer with you, but now I can't.
So what we're running into right now is wild parsnip is becoming an issue, especially on the east side of Marathon County. It's a very invasive species. It's nothing you want to tangle with. I've seen pictures of people that got in it, irritation of the skin, burns. It's a very nasty weed out there. So what we're doing right now, we have 2 people that have been trained for noxious weeds through the University of Wisconsin Extension. We sent them to classes, and they've been trained how to spray the weeds. The problem is we're spraying the right-of-way, which is generally probably 40 feet on the state road for terms of talking 40 or 50 feet. And behind that, we may have another 3 acres of wild parsnip. So what we're doing out there is protecting our small right-of-way, but we're really not fixing the overall problem. By appointing a weed commissioner, a few counties have done this in the area. Wood County, Portage County, they actually share one. Waushara County has a weed commissioner. What allows that person to do is go into the private property legally and say, we're going to get rid of these weeds and spray these weeds to stop the overrun of whatever invasive species we have. In this case, it's been wild parsnips has been the main culprit. Portage County has a person that they use. It's a non-paid position. I had somebody actually contact me last fall already about areas in Rim Mountain that he's seen wild parsnip, and he's very in tune to the situation. And I asked him if he would be interested in being appointed this. He said he would be. I also brought up the fact that Portage County does not pay this person. It's a position, again, appointed by a county board through state statutes. And Ben told me to tell the committee that you could never afford his services anyhow, so he'll do it for free. So he does not expect to be paid for this position. But before I get into actually getting through the appointment, there's a lot of things that you need to be aware of. You know, there are some issues that Portage and other counties have seen going through this already. You know, you need to have public acceptance of spraying and brushing, utilization of contractors or other counties. You know, one problem we run into if we don't do it ourselves is when the time comes for spraying, there's a limited number of counties or companies out there doing it, so everybody wants them at the same time. We've got to be responsive to there's certain periods that you can spray them and shouldn't spray them, so you have an area to go out there. And the biggest area of concern is people are concerned with overspray or drift of that. You know, they're not wanting to, you know, have other things in our area sprayed, so, there are areas of concern. Just for some numbers' sake, Portage County, again, I talked to Nathan down there. Both Portage, Wood, they both do about 1/3 of their counties every year. So what they do is when they do a lot of brushing in the winter, then they'll go in and spray for that woody vegetation. That's something we like to do because it seems after we cut the brush, it just gets stronger and stronger. It grows back faster every time we cut it, so we like to be spraying for that woody vegetation in known areas of wild parsnip. So they spray about 1/3 of their county every year, and it's running them anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 each year for this program. So, again, it's something that I think we should pursue, but again, I didn't want to get into the, pardon the pun, into the weeds too much until I want to know that this committee wants to go forward, something like that. Again, you may hear feedback from, people saying we're spraying, but you got to look at the big picture. I feel that what we're spraying is a very dangerous invasive species that's starting to spread rapidly through the eastern part of the county.
Thank you. Supervisor Seibert?
Jim, is this the whole county, townships?
Right now, it would be for the county roads, but we could work with, I'd have to get Michael to help me read through the statutes a little bit, but I believe right now the other counties are working with their townships that they can farm out to the townships.
That would probably be, include the whole county, because if it's invasive and taking over.
I know
countryside.
we've actually did a little bit of spraying just to help them out. The town of Knowlton right now, they have it almost on every one of their roads. With the county being the size it is, if we start looking at spraying the entire county, it could be quite a big program.
I know we've had, just in the town today, we've had locators that refused to locate because of weeds growing in the ditch. So we had to get rid of the weeds first before they would come and locate.
So, again, that's the case of I mentioned before, they blossom and get hot all at the same time. So if we're talking entire Marathon County, we may have to get more than one contractor in to help everybody out with that.
Okay.
But this would be something the weed commissioner that'd be part of his position, would be kind of organizing, bringing people in if we need to bring other people in and trying to get as much of it eradicated as possible.
Supervisor Dickinson?
So the reason for appointing a weed commissioner would be to simply be able to focus in on that work where the county highway department, your department, just doesn't have the resource?
Both that and the weed commissioner can go on, right now, we can't go on private property either. So again, I'll use Highway 52, for example. I know there's an area out there that we sprayed the right-of-way last year, and there's probably behind it, probably at least 5 acres of wild parsnip behind it. So we're spraying, I'm spraying this much of the table, but the rest of the table is all in growth. So what we're doing is kind of a waste of time unless we can go eradicate everything that's out in that area. So the weed commissioner has that powers to go onto private property and say, we are spraying this.
Supervisor Robinson?
When we spray, is it a broad spectrum herbicide or a targeted herbicide?
I believe it's targeted.
Thank you. Supervisor Seibert?
Are the mowers going to be trained to watch for this stuff? That would be an asset. These guys run every road cutting grass.
We have trained, and on April 12th, the person actually that I like to, if we go through this, the weed commissioner, Ben, he's actually, again, we have our in-house training that day, and it's one of the training sessions how to identify those.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Supervisor Dickinson?
So in reading the statute, and it talks about the powers, duties, and compensation, it does state a weed commissioner may enter upon any lands that are not exempt and cut or otherwise destroy noxious weeds without being liable to an action for trespass or any other action for damages resulting from the entry and destruction if reasonable care is exercised. So I'm in general favor of having a weed commissioner to manage the issue. I do have some concerns about that statement in the statute and the powers given that weed commissioner in relation to private property ownership.
And that's going to be brought to this committee before I got into it too far. I didn't want to go through the work and bring somebody forward and not have it happen, so that's on the table for discussion.
Supervisor Strobel?
Yes, how long has this invasive species been known to be a nuisance and a problem?
Yeah, well, it's been known for years, but I think it's been more of a problem, I would guess, probably within the last 3-4 years. It's becoming more and more starting to spread, so probably, but I would guess that 3 to 4 years has become a bigger issue. They've been around forever.
And as a follow-up, so the best we can hope for is just to slow it down.
Correct. We're probably never going to eradicate every plant in Marathon County, but we can.
Kind of like oak wilt, you'll never really cure.
Supervisor Robinson?
I want to try to address or follow up on Supervisor Dickinson's concern. While the statutes are broad relative to the application and our potential for entering that private property, we can establish policies of informed consent prior to entering those properties as a policy. So I would hope that we would look at not only what the statutes enable, that's protective of us if we go, but then our policies of when we enter, because there's contradictory statutes in application, but I think informed consent would be a critical part of this effort.
Thank you. As far as discussion today, you don't have a proposed budget, what this would cost the highway department for this weed commissioner, whether he's free or you
Well,
pay him, or-
the weed commissioner himself would be free, but time, if you start bringing in other counties, and even if we would end up making our own equipment work, I don't have a hard number on it. I think it'd be tough to put one together until I actually had a total count on it. Again, looking at Portage County, the size of Portage County, they're at $20,000 to $30,000 a year, so I would say we'd be at least at that, if not a little bit more.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So what is the ask today? There are two components of this. One is the creation of the weed commissioner, and the second is the funding for the activities. So
Right.
what are we being asked?
My ask today is just for if this committee feels this is something that we should continue to pursue, then I can put stuff together. We can look at that criteria. We can look at projected costs, how we would do it, if we would contract with other counties, private contractors, get our equipment to fit to see if we would have staff to do it. But again, it's a lot of work that goes into it, and I just want to know if it's something you want us to pursue before we put a lot of effort into this and come back to committee and say, this is nothing we ever be interested in anyhow.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Robinson?
I would move that we request staff to develop a weed commissioner policy, including costs to implement the program and to bring it back to the committee.
Is there a second? Supervisor Gissman? Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. There is none. Move on to number 7, educational presentation and committee discussion. 7A, Highway Commissioner's report, and Commissioner Griesbach.
Short and sweet, we've been doing a lot of plowing in the month of January up to this last cold snap. A lot of it's been Mother Nature and some of it's been help with snow coming off the mountain. We've been working with the mountain as much as we can. When snow comes off the hill, when they're making snow, they have 75 snow guns up there. They've been pretty good about shutting them down when we tell them that we're getting snow on the road, but it still falls for a few hours after the fact. You know, and they admittedly, they said they don't want to make snow that's not going on top of the mountain because they're losing dollars also. So we've been working with Granite Peak on those days that we've been out plowing on 51. Snows has carried as far as Mosinee off of that hill when they're making what the weather conditions are right. Generally, they like to be done making snow right around the first of the year. We had that warm spell right after Christmas. They lost a lot of snow, so they're way behind with their snowmaking operations. Office staff's been working with IT, mainly Darren White, and with Jerry being here, Darren has been nothing more than top-level person. Everything we need from Darren, he's come through with us to the point of he knew he had to be there early one morning after ice fishing. He slept in the parking lot at Quick Trip, so he'd be there the next morning. So hats off to Darren, and we appreciate the effort that he put in. As many of you know, the county has switched over to Workday for their software system. Seeing the county's a little special, we switched over Workday. We put in a new accounting system called CHEMS, which is a state-based highway cost accounting program. And we also went to our own electronic timekeeping, that what the county's using, RT Vision. So we end up going in 3 new softwares that Darren worked on with us. So we switched over and things have been going really smooth on those. We've been working on selecting consultants for the upcoming STP projects and getting state municipal agreements in place for both the county and local municipalities that I oversee. Next week, the executive committee for WCHA, we're going to be in Madison. We're going to meet with the Secretary of Transportation, chairs for the State Transportation Committee, both Senator Tomczyk and Representative Vandermeer, DNR officials, TDA, road builders, and WCA. So we're going to make the rounds in Madison next week and talk about issues in hand and introduce our new executive director for the Wisconsin County Highway Association, Pat Vandersladen.
Thank you. Any questions or, go ahead.
Just one in relation to Granite Peak. So with the discussions about potentially doubling the size of that, of the slopes and everything, has there been any discussion with the county highway department about the potential impacts of having more slopes and such, and the impact it would have on us?
We had preliminary discussions when they first started looking at putting the additional runs in. We haven't had the conversations with them what to do with the additional effects it may have on our road. It's been an issue we've been dealing with. We actually brought this to committee years ago, about Granite Peak does bring in a great revenue to Marathon County, and we understand that. We brought this to this committee years back. If, we have snow conditions, what do you want us to do? At that point, we were told, just keep on plowing the snow for the county residents, even though we know some of that's coming off the hill. So we haven't had detailed discussions to them on what the effects of the snow is going to be. My assumption, again, this is my assumption, it'll be less because those slopes are running farther to the west. And usually when we're getting the issues, it's, when they're making snow closer to 51. So the farther west they go, the less impact we should see.
Thank you. I did receive a call from a private business that plows snow for parking lots and for apartments in the remote mountain area, and he was concerned that people are calling him, you need to come and plow, or nowhere else there's any snow. So I did talk to Jim about this, and like I said, it's been an ongoing issue. So I don't know what more we can do at this level. So, any other questions?
Just for your information also with the same topic, every October or so, we do sit down with the DOT, Granite Peak officials and us to discuss, improvements that we could see. So we do have annual meetings with them.
Thank you. Anything else? Jim, okay. Moving on to 7B, update on information technology projects, and we got Mr. Klein here.
I am. Good morning. I can give you a couple of things on Granite Peak too, since I have my town responsibilities and my ski patrol responsibilities. They have had a hard time making snow in January when it was cold because we've actually had really high humidity. And they can't make snow when it's 96% humidity, which actually for about 3 weeks it was running over 95%. This last weekend they made snow Friday all day, Saturday I think. They finished opening all of the runs. They're listed as 100% open now. I'm guessing they'll probably do a few fill in some spots, but they're nearly close to done with snowmaking. And then with respect to the master plan, I think John's been involved in this to some extent as well. The next step on it is the DNR actually has to approve the master plan based on the recommendations from the Natural Resource Board. They have yet to do that. And then once that's done, if that's done the same way it was, the NRB board sent it to them, then they'll need to negotiate a lease with Granite Peak Ski Corporation. And that's the time at which I think we'd have discussions about it. I know that the town's concerned about water runoff in addition to snowmaking, but I think the bigger issue long-term for the highway department is that if they do extend to the west and put 2 lifts over there, Charles's plan is to put another base operation at the base of that, and he owns 29 acres there that he could develop into condos. So my expectation is that if they expand to the west, they'll most likely want to develop Grouse Road into a much more significant road than it is today. And so the traffic that normally goes and turns into the ski hill will go further west and turn into Grouse. And so that piece of dealing with that traffic will be probably the next conversation. I think because if he develops his townhouses or condos or whatever he ends up building over there, and then he puts another base operation over there in a parking lot, there'll be both traffic and water runoff to deal with. So lots to come on that. Plus you'll need sewer and water, which doesn't extend that far. So that could be a pretty significant discussion between the town, the ski hill, and the highway department when we get to that spot. So that's ski hill stuff.
Thank you.
As far as, we have a lot of different projects going on. I just want, and you have a packet on it, but I just want to quick highlight what they are, because a lot of them are actually having involve the county. To prepare for County K, the roundabout at K and WW, we have to move some fiber that we have out there. We share fiber with the school district and the tech college, and that fiber that is up there right now goes from, is our Wausau Community Area Network fiber. It goes up K, it has a lateral into the school, Main Elementary School, and then it goes to the farm, the NTC dairy farm operation. It's in the way, and so we had to move it. We've been working with Kevin quite a bit over the last few months. We put it out for bid to try to get it moved this fall. That was a non-starter. They wanted $295,000 to do something we thought was going to be about $80,000. So we put it back out for bid and let them do it in spring, and that's where we ended up. We've got Alexco has got the contract, and they've started working on it. Kevin and I just exchanged contact on this last week. Because the frost, it's been fairly warm in January, some of the fiber people are still working, which normally they wouldn't be working right now. So we have to get out of the way by Kevin, I think we ended up figuring the end of April, right? Or is it the end of March? I think we're trying to get we pushed it to the end, it's April 30th, I think. So that was a little bit more work than expected. The last 2 nights I've been down at the Community Partners campus that we have leased space at for the county. They had an open house. Some of you were there. There was an open house on both of the last 2 nights. Our network connections are in the process of being set up. We have some of it done. We have a little bit more to do this week. But the county will have staff in there starting on Monday already. And it'll be a rotation of social services, ADRC, and North Central Healthcare. North Central Healthcare will be doing telepsych Thursday mornings from 8 to 12 for scheduled appointments at the CPC campus. If you haven't been down there, you should go see it. It's a pretty neat operation. Of course, it's the year end, so we've been busy. We're in the midst, we obviously are switching over from the Kayenta financial system to the Workday financial system. So at this moment, we're in both because we're doing year end 1099s, W-2s, year-end financials, year-end closeout is all being done in Kayenta, while we're working on the Workday project, which I'll cover last. Last Tuesday, we replaced 2 of our core routers, which are very expensive pieces of equipment. We have 6 of them in total. We're working through replacing them pair by pair. We signed contracts for expanding the video conferencing in the courtrooms. We have it in 3 of the courtrooms right now. It'll be in all of the rest of the courtrooms. So what we'll end up with is 6 courtrooms with full video, 2 of the, what are they? They're not called courtrooms. The hearing rooms, 2 hearing rooms, and then 3 video systems in the jail. We have the 3 video systems in the jail done. We have 1 of the big courtrooms done and 2 of the hearing rooms done. So that equipment's on order. I do not have a schedule installed for it yet. Down at North Central Campus, there's a lot of construction continuing to go on. Last I heard, social services will be moving in late February, early March. I think that's the current schedule. So my team's working with those guys on all the low voltage wiring, switches, cameras, Wi-Fi access points, and all of that stuff. We are not too involved yet, but we will be pulling it in as they start finishing the 2nd floor of the nursing home. They finished demolition on it right before Christmas, and they're starting to build that out right now. So we'll be over there. That'll probably be more of a summer project. And then we're building a conference suite down there that's expected to be done around the end of June, early July. And we have video equipment ordered for that. It's a 1 big conference room that can be used as a big room or split into 2 rooms. Both rooms will be able to run simultaneous different video conferences or the same across the whole room. And then there's a classroom and 3 other conference rooms. So there's quite a bit of equipment that's going down there. You guys have heard much conversations about about chips being delayed. This started at the beginning of COVID. It continues. We have equipment that we've ordered that's not coming until next spring, a year from now. So the equipment that we ordered for this conference suite, a few pieces of it were very much delayed. And so we've been able to work with vendors and find alternate providers, but that continues to hamper us. Docking stations, it's interesting, we can get laptops, but we can't get docking stations. We can get firewalls, but we can't get switches. And so we continue to be challenged by delays in equipment, which is holding up other projects. And then the last but not least, the biggest project we've been working on is Workday. Jim mentioned this earlier. This replaces our financial system, so accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, budgeting, grant process management, and then it also implements a new human resource system, what they call human capital management. Starting the second week of December, we started doing payrolls on it. We have now run 2 payrolls for the county, 2 payrolls for the city, and 2 payrolls for city county IT on it. So that has settled down. That was a lot of work. We then switched into all of the accounts payable and accounts receivable projects. We started that January 1st. We had the first 2 weeks were pretty bumpy. I won't kid you. We had challenges with the bank files with U.S. Bank. We worked through them by the end of last week. Pretty much got through all of those. We had vendors that had gotten checks that got bounced because our positive pay file was not working properly. It was a challenging thing. It had been tested in our test environment. The first file went out and worked, and then the second file had something slightly different in it, and it didn't work. So we had challenges with positive pay files. We're through that. And then over the last 4 or 5 days, we've been really focusing on intercompany payments. So payments between the city to the county, county to the city, county IT to vendors. Highway department orders equipment has us order equipment for them. We order it from the vendor, and then we need to get paid by them. That's the process we're working on right now. And it sounds like there should only be 3 intercompany business processes, but there's probably 20. Because the county, there's some really interesting things that happen, like people show up at the county and pay for property taxes that needed to go to the city by mistake. And by arrangement, the city and the county both accept those, because who wants to turn down someone that's willing to write you a check? And so they, as an example, those are fairly complicated. The city and the county both get payments that belong to the city, to the other entity, and they need to be very carefully coded to the right cost centers. That's been very challenging to to nuance through that kind of activity. So we're working through that. We have almost all of it done and working now. There's the next thing we're going to be working on is Parks Department, which is has an additional set of complicated intercompany transfers because, like City County IT, they support the city and the county, and they have a lot of grants. And so that's kind of where we're at with Workday. Any questions on any of the projects?
I do have one question.
Yeah.
How is this Workday going to affect the Marathon County board members? I mean, we don't,
Yeah, it'll affect you guys two ways for sure. I worked with Kurt in the last 2 weeks a couple of times on this. One is that your pay stubs are coming out of there now. So to get electronic access to your pay stubs, we need to have you guys log into Workday. We were talking about pushing that off until March because Kurt thought you had a fairly busy schedule in February for the February board meetings. So we're talking about maybe doing a presentation in the March board meeting on how you guys can log into Workday to get your pay stubs and get your W-2s. And then the other piece is your expense reports, and we have not completely settled on exactly what we're going to do with that. I think right now what we're leaning to do is for a while leave you guys using the current Laserfish forms process for submitting your expense reports, and then we would look at a later date to potentially do something, or maybe two things. One of the things I've been suggesting to Kurt is those that are interested in using Workday, it had some benefits to them, but it might be more complicated for some people. So I could see a point in time where the county board members can say, you can use this paper form, or this semi-electronic form, or you can use this fully electronic process, depending on what you feel comfortable with. But we haven't made those decisions yet. So those are the two things that'll affect you guys the most: is your pay stubs, which includes your W-2s, and then the expense reporting.
thank you. Yeah, the expense report is, if you could improve that, that would be great, to what we have now.
Yeah, I'll reserve.
No, I know. I do the paper yet, so.
You guys can imagine. I'm not going to say anything that doesn't surprise anybody. That surprises anybody. Excuse me. And you have a wide variety of technological skill levels in the 38 board members, and so trying to find the right place to land for mix of technology and ease is what we need to figure out. So, but we've had Christy and I met with Kurt about this and talked to him at least twice recently.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Jerry? All right, thank you. Moving on to 7D, broadband updates from Supervisor Robinson.
Just a quick update. We received word yesterday that they're having trouble getting tap boxes, which is how the utilities go into the tower. So it's delaying the startup of the Knowlton Tower, which is important to us because of the public safety aspect. So they're having the same issues that Jerry's seen. But I wanted to quick give you an update as to where we are. We currently have 2 public service grants that were awarded to Frontier and Bug Tussle. And we're working out the logistics of those. In the case of Bug Tussle, it's for the Cronin-Water, Gunther, Knowlton area. They're serving 606 plus homes and businesses. We pledged a grant of $235 per unit served, or $142,400. And we also committed to them to do a $3 million, to provide a loan along the terms of what we had entered into in the November 2021 agreement for the conduit borrowing. So we're working on that. We had planned on using ARPA dollars. The problem with ARPA dollars for the loan is that the loan period extends the end date of the ARPA program. So we're looking at alternatives, and Mike Brenner and Christy and others are developing something. We'll have something in the near future that we'll need to run through this committee and others. In the context of Frontier, we pledged about $944,000 of ARPA dollars for that. And again, there are discussions, I think, next week or in the next few days relative to the terms. And we're looking, that's a reimbursement. We reimburse them after their work is done to make sure that they do the work. There's currently a grant call by the Public Service Commission for $14.1 million due, I think it's February 22nd. We've reached out to some of the internet service providers. There's not a lot of interest right now, probably because they're so busy with many of their projects that they are having a hard time taking on new projects. So it's something that we will want to keep in mind looking forward. And the final area is the FC, as I mentioned at the county board meeting, the FCC has rolled out the new fabric map showing where areas are underserved. We have looked at that map, and if you look at it very high level, it looks like all of Marathon County is served. And when you start drilling down and more granular data, there's a number of gaps, but there also are some internet service providers that are claiming to provide service, for instance, the Eau Claire Dells Park, and we know that there's no service there. We have explored doing a bulk challenge on the part of the county. We need to go through a formal process of getting licensed to do that, and Jerry's been working with the Sheriff's Department to access their access to get the license, and it's just taking longer than we thought. But there's also the ability of individuals to go into the fabric map and do individual challenges. There's been a lot of criticism. I subscribe to a couple of publications and newsletters relative to the broadband industry, and there's been widespread criticism all across the country about the friendliness of that challenge process, both in terms of bulk challenges for local governments and on an individual basis. I know that Jim Bovee, for instance, a former county board member, tried to challenge it. He couldn't get in and challenge it because the speeds were overstated, and it's a problem. That map is going to be used to allocate $42.5 billion, so it's important that we work on it. So we're doing everything we can to try to increase the accuracy. We're going to look at that license for bulk challenges. We issued the press release last week encouraging people to do that, but if you know of people, please let Jerry or I know, and we can look at that for the bulk challenge basis. But Kurt Gibbs and I sent a letter to the Federal Communication Commission asking for a delay in the allocation of the dollars using that map. We've been in contact with Becca Berman from Senator Baldwin's office, who's an attorney working on that with the FCC. A number of other U.S. senators and communities across the country have submitted similar requests to delay the application of it. But we had a terrible map replaced by a not-so-good map, and we're just trying to make it better and more accurately reflect where the true needs are, because, again, that map will determine where the dollars will go.
Thank you. Any questions for Supervisor Robinson? Or the process with working with to get these maps changed, is that our responsibility, or is that?
Local governments are allowed to do bulk challenges. The problem is we started looking at that. Jerry reached out to the PSC and to the NTIA, never got a response from NTIA, but from the PSC, they outlined the licensing process. So we have to get a license because there's protected or privileged information going down to the granular basis to the home, and we've got to be licensed. That process, when we began, was a 4-week process. The original deadline was January 13th, but it's an ongoing challenge process. So we've been working with Preston at CPZ, and we'll continue to look at how do we aggregate the information and use to create a bulk challenge. I know the Public Service Commission submitted a bulk challenge of about 7,000 units across the state, but there's a lot more that we know of. But I think there's an individual responsibility, and we will try to do it in the areas where we know that it's overstated. And the industry tried to do as good of a job as they could within a short timeline of providing that information. We've just surprised. We've got companies we've never heard of claiming to be providing fiber services in the county, and I think that it's just we need to correct that, and particularly in some of our significantly unserved and significantly underserved areas. So we'll look at, via the broadband task force, looking at how we can clearly articulate it. We'll work with PSC and the FCC and anybody else, but we need the information. We'll take the information generated through GeoPartners, that speed test that we were working through North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, and Synergy, the Economic Development Authority, and apply that and see if, how that information relates to the current coverage maps. But I think that it's a shared responsibility. We'll do some local, individual owner or, residences and businesses should do some, and we'll work with the PSC and others to challenge it.
I can
Thank
add
you.
something too if you want.
Go ahead.
I had a citizen call and leave me a voicemail. She didn't even leave her name and address or phone number, so I couldn't call her back. But she basically left a sassy message and said, I don't have internet at work, at my house at work. So how am I supposed to use this map to complain that I don't have internet, other than have to drive into town and use someone else's Wi-Fi to tell them that I don't have internet at my house, which I thought was interesting. But I can tell you, this map, it's clear that their intention was to have individuals file the challenges. They are not making it easy at all for municipalities to file, and the map is really, really hard to use. Dave can appreciate this. It's clearly written by someone like Preston. It's definitely it's got all the attributes of a very technical person writing a map. I'm like, hey, this makes sense to me. It does not going to make sense to people that don't understand mapping tools. So it's hard to do. I did file representing Marathon County, I did file a challenge in the Dells of the Eau Claire Park itself. The ranger station is listed as having service from a company called Bertram at 50 by 10. No, that's not right. It was 50 by 50, I think. It was really an odd number that the technology doesn't even exist for that. So I did file a challenge request, and I got a response back from the FCC saying we've received your challenge request, and the provider has 10 days to resolve the problem. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it would be valuable to reach out to, I think I sent this to John the other day, might be valuable to reach out to the town board supervisors that are up in the area, because that one in particular, that whole area north of Eau Claire, like along Highway 52 there, is all listed as being served, every house, by Bertram at 50 megabits by maybe it's 10, I can't remember. But I'm reasonably sure that's not true.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson?
So one question in their map, as you call up a location, it tells you which providers are there. Is there a weighting system for those? For example, here you have 2 local wireless providers at 25, and then you have a satellite at 100. Well, some people talk about the Space Link or whatever. When you could get that for, it might take a year and a half. So although it's offered, you're not getting it in a reasonable amount of time. So is there some sort of weighting between a weighted system in those providers that you know of?
No, correct me, Jerry. My understanding is
Satellite is not considered broadband.
right.
So it has to be a terrestrial service. So what's weird, he's got the tool up on his screen. So if you were to go to that little, this is the part of this tool that I hate. You go to that little gear up there, and you can see that it's turned on everything. So if you click that to say only wired or only terrestrial, and then go back to the other screen, you'll now see that little red dot showed up that said you're not served. I don't know how I could tell people how to do that. I mean, it's just not intuitive at all.
And again, the broad comprehensive map shows everything served by satellite and others.
Well,
So it
Chris,
creates,
you probably realize that when you
it
zoom
creates
out,
confusion.
it looks like everything's served, right? You start zooming out. The other challenge with it is not an easy fixable. They're still using the 2014 definition of broadband, which is 25.3. They keep talking about moving it to 100 by 10, but they haven't. So most people would consider a Wi-Fi connection at 25.3 is really marginal. But they have not moved it. So any provider that says that they can provide 25 by 3, they're listed as served. Even though people that use that would say, hey, I'm trying to do, three of us are trying to work from home. I got 2 students and 2 parents working from home, and I can't do it on 25-3. It's still considered served, so that there would be no funding available from the $42 billion for anybody, for any provider that said, I'll fix that, I'll run fiber to that house. They won't be able to get it because it's still, the FCC would say, it's served. We're not giving you any money for it. And even though it's divided across the whole country, $42 billion is a lot of money. So we would have the chance to get some pretty significant funding.
All right, thank you. Any other, go ahead, Supervisor
I
Robinson.
just want to highlight or raise another concern, because last week I was down as part of the county ambassador program and met with a number of our area legislators. And one of the senator's office said there won't be any more state funding for broadband because of all the money coming in from the feds. And to put it in perspective, I think we're projected to get anywhere from $700 million to $1.2 billion out of that 42.5. We don't know yet, and some of it's based on what the map shows. But one time the estimated cost of Marathon County for broadband was $200 million. I think it's $270+ million for Brown County. So when you start talking about dollars like that, $700 million doesn't go far enough. And I think we'll need to make sure that we articulate to our legislative delegation that while the feds are helpful because of the cumbersome nature of some of their processes and mapping, that we still need a state presence in funding of broadband going forward.
All right, all kinds of good news. We keep moving forward, though. A lot further than we were in the past, so, but thank you.
We're talking about stuff that is fairly sarcastic and not great news, but the reality is we've got a ton of new fiber going into this county.
Exactly.
We're way ahead of where we were 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, so, thank you. Anything else on the broadband? Thank you, Supervisor Robinson, and Jerry, thank you for the updates. Moving on to 7E, County Highway K bid opening, and Kevin has got the pleasure of doing that.
We opened bids this month for the Highway K project and the Highway WW roundabout. Most people will see that as one project. The way that the funds were split up, we had to do those as 2 separate ones. Highway K went through the state process 100%, and then the WW roundabout was, it's considered a local lead. So we followed all the same standards. Everything looks the same. When you drive through it, it'll look the same, but as far as our end, we had 2 different processes for that. The K project came in at about $5.174 million. It was about 4.6% over the engineer's estimate. We did a request through DOT, and they actually upped our funding to help match that overage of 4.6%. So we gained another $117,000 of funds on that one. The WW roundabout came in at $1.508 million, and when we originally did that request, we had $1 million of local road improvement funds and $500,000 of local funds. So we're right on target with that one. It was about $8,000 over, which, considering the way costs have gone over the past year, I take that as a win. So we're at about $6.7 million total for construction on that, 5.2 on K, 1.5 on WW, and I had my totals up here. Give me 1 second, bring that back. And we're sitting, our federal funds or our outside revenues on that are they're about $5.2 million right now. So we're on track, and contract should be moving forward. The WW schedule is set to start at the beginning of June. And then we've asked them to get done before school gets out of session or back into session in the fall. And K project, I think that's a working day one. It'll fall about that same time frame, but there's a few different phases on that. So as we work through the contracts, we'll get the schedules and work that out with contractors.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Kevin? All right, thank you. Moving on to 7F, relocation of highway facility updates. Mr. Griesbach.
Just a quick update on that. I did meet with Norman Barriento, as the consultant that's working on the plans for us for quite some time now, back on the 12th of January to go over some possible scope changes. Originally, we had talked about conservation planning and zoning being part of the campus, Parks Department being part of the campus, Sheriff Maintenance being part of the campus, Emergency Management. So with CPZ no longer coming out there, probably, we met with Norman to look at the scope a little bit. If it would just be the Highway Department alone, or if it'd be the Highway Department and the parks, how many acres would it take to put that on, and a revised cost estimate. So we're going to sit down and meet with him again on February 16th to discuss the revised scope and the costs of developing, and also at that time sit down and talk about developing a communication plan for the future. What we're talking about there is what we would map out to present for this committee, the board, the community at large, and when we want to have key decisions made, who's involved in those meetings. So we're going to sit down and look at that, Lance, myself, Kevin, and Barrientos on the 16th of February, and then we'll present those at the next board meeting, or excuse me, next infrastructure committee meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Jim? All right. Moving on to 7G, County Highway J, State Highway 153, State Highway 29, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs updates.
We received some good news as for the Highway J project from 153 up to Weston Avenue. That project was cited to be estimated cost at $4,800,000. We were receiving $3.8 million of federal funds, and local funds was going to be, well, local funds will be $973,000. These are all projected numbers, estimates. We did apply to the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, to help us with that cost share. And we were notified last week that we're going to be receiving $870,000 from the Ho Chunk, from the part of the Access Road program. So out of that 973 that we need to match, 870 is coming from the Ho Chunk. So overall, you know, if numbers would fall in place, out of the $4.8 million for that road, we'd have a little over about 100,000 stuck in the county funds. So great partnership with the BIA. Love working with the Ho Chunk Nation. They're a great group to work with.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on any of those projects? All right, moving on to number 8, next meeting dates, times, announcements, and future agenda items. Committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, the next meeting is for March 9th. Just take note that it was changed from the 2nd.
A couple of things here. For the meeting ideas for next idea, we will have an update, just so we get some notes, so we don't forget about it. Yesterday, we had the quarterly highway safety meeting, so I'll have an update on that. Kevin can provide that. He had attended for me. I had other obligations. Also, for probably more Supervisor Dickinson, anybody else, I did check on the Highway 153 project this week. That is still scheduled to go. And Supervisor Seibert, that's still scheduled to go. It's going out for bids here February 14th is the last date. So that one's still scheduled to go this summer. Unfortunately, talking to the project manager, I think it's going to be mid to late summer. So, but it's at least still scheduled to go this summer. As far as the next meeting goes, I know I had talked to Chairman McHugh about moving the meeting to 1 week later. I'm going to be out of town in Washington on the normal meeting date, but Kim also contacted me that this room is unavailable at that time, so we need to have it in this room, so we probably need to find a date and a time that works, or the other option is to have it on the 2nd, and Lance can kind of walk through the update with Barrientos, and I just won't be present.
I'm also going to
Second. Is there any thoughts? What about on that day at a different time on the 9th?
Dave has the schedule, so.
So the assembly room is open from
11 till 3?
executive committee meeting is that day as well at 3.
As far as keeping it for the 9th, would 11 o'clock work for the committee?
That's the same day as executive.
That's at 3. So, I mean,
Because I would prefer it be maybe 1.
yeah, that would be fine with, yeah. Would 1 o'clock on the 9th work for everyone? Okay, so we'll keep it on the 9th, but have it at 1 o'clock. If that works. For you. All right. So next meeting will be March 9th at 1 o'clock PM here. So, all right, any other items that the committee would like to discuss? That I know that assembly committee that we had asked the public safety in this committee and I believe ERC or EED, I'm not sure, I can't remember now what those 3 committees were supposed to appoint. I know Supervisor Straub and Supervisor Robinson vote. We had 1, but I guess public safety has 2. So it's up to this, committee. But like I said, we haven't put anything together for that. I'll talk to Lance on that to see where he's at on any updates, and maybe we can start those discussions next meeting. Okay? Anything else?
I just have something for the next meeting, Jim, on that wild parsnip, that's related to hogweed. I know there's pictures out there of the effects of hogweed and wild parsnip, and maybe if you'd have some of those that you could, get some of those in a record, because it's a pretty serious scabbing type thing, where, I mean, your whole body can end up in one huge scab if you get it the right time of the year. So.
I'll work with Ben on looking at the most dangerous ones and ones we should look at.
Hogweed and wild parsnip are cousins. They look a lot alike, and do we know, do we have hogweed in the county, or is it just wild parsnip?
I'm not sure about the hogweed.
Okay.
I believe, though you just mentioned it, don't quote me, but I believe Tony Knowlton mentioned that also.
Hogweed. That's a bigger plant than wild parsnip.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, look for number 9. Adjournment. Supervisor Dickinson, motion, second by Supervisor Robinson to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, and see you later.
Thanks for coming back, Mike.